This is White Plains Week, the weekly roundup of White Plains, Westchester, and world news. With John Bailey, editor and publisher of the daily internet newspaper White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, WPCNR.com. Jim Benerofe, editor and publisher of SuburbanStreet.com and WhitePlains.com. And me, Peter Katz, formerly with NBC, ABC News, and stations from Boston to Los Angeles. White Plains Week, what's happening, who are the newsmakers, what's in store for the future. The views and opinions expressed on this program are solely those of the participants. White Plains Week is presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76, Verizon Fios Channel 45, and on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. Now, White Plains Week.
Good evening, Mr. and Mrs. White Plains, Westchester, and the world. John Bailey, Citizen Net Reporter, with the Dean of Journalism in the City of White Plains, Jim Benerofe, and Peter Katz, the anchor for all seasons, is on assignment this evening. And right now, we need to go right to the headlines.
And here are the headlines for the week of June 16th, 2017. School district reaches agreement on new 2-year contract with White Plains teachers. 1% raise in pay is a 1% to 5% raise for presently employed teachers. Milagros Lacuona follows up Mayor Roach's robocall with one of her own. County Executive holds shared services meeting with mayors, supervisors of all cities, towns to comply with new state law. State Education Commissioner Mary Ellen Elia promises shorter state assessment tests in 2018. White Plains Week will have another edition of Trump the President. State Attorney General's office warns of increase in elder abuse crimes and scams targeting the elderly.
Thank you, Jim. And right now we go right to the Rollo Newsreel March of Time. And this is a shot of course, the Board of Education a few weeks ago. And the reason they are up first is the Board of Education approved, next slide please, a raise for the teachers for 2 years out to 2018. Howard Smith, the acting superintendent of schools, confirmed this. And the meeting on Monday night, this Board of Education approved the contract, Jim, for dependent on the White Plains Teachers Association accepting it. And this is what it does. Next slide. It gives a 1% step increase across all step levels across the board starting July 1st. That's about 11 days, about 12, 13 days from now. And a 3% to 5% increase for over the 2016-17 contract. And it's a very good deal if you are presently employed in the upper step levels. And next slide, please. In 2018, new hires after July 1st will be hired at the 1% first step level across all levels. And that's a very good money-saving item, because if you only have to hire at the 1% level, say for a Master of Arts holder, then that is considerably less than you would pay them if they'd been with you for around 10 years or so. And next slide, please. Dr. Smith said that the teachers' pensions will increase as a result of step movement, representing both another year of service and a higher salary. That is one long-term effect of this. And Kerry Broderick, the White Plains Teachers Association president, told me the agreement is a product of good conversation of the needs and parameters of both the district and the teachers. It is a fair contract. So, why do you think this sets up.
Sounds pretty good to me.
It certainly does. It's very good for the district because you've got Dr. Joseph Ricca, the new superintendent, coming in, and he doesn't have to worry about aggravating the teachers with negotiations for 2 years.
Now, what is he? He's coming in July? Or?
Yes, July the 1st. So now you've got to really hand it to Dr. Howard Smith. This is the fastest negotiation they have ever done. They started it on March the 28th.
Wow.
And then, whoosh, hey, we want this, we want that. We think we could do that. Hey, we got it. Slap 5. I mean, that's amazing.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, you really have to, the teachers seem to recognize a very good deal when they see one. Now, let's go a little deeper into this. Next slide, please. The salary effects for teachers on staff. Oh, gee, I think I did not pass my ELA assessment there with that typo on STAFF, right? That's a spelling error. The example, the teacher with a Master's of Arts degree on staff now, as of July the 1st, will receive the increase of up to $69,702. Now, the old contract, that's the one that's in effect in its last few weeks now, they would be paid $66,454. It's a 5% increase in pay. That is the effect because, of course, the step and the 1% on the higher salaries. And this sort of works out very nicely for the teachers that are on staff. And now there is a fly in the ointment here. The health insurance portion, the teacher's pay goes up partially, but it's offset by the step increases. The step increases basically do away with the increase that they will have to pay in the health insurance. For example, starting July 1st, they will get a 0.5% increase in what teachers pay as their share of the health insurance, and in 2018 they will get another 0.25% hike. Now, in the new contract, the family portion that the teacher has to pay is $3,458. Single person, $1,544, and in 2018 it goes up to $3,672 and $1,639 respectively. So therefore, even though they are giving up, you know, more, they have to pay more for health insurance, it is offset by the raise. This is actually good from this standpoint, I would think. But it also highlights the problem that we all face with benefits of rising costs. What do you think about this?
Well, I think that those healthcare costs seem fairly reasonable.
Yes, it seems like
You know, I think healthcare is a very tough situation all around. And I think they're in a good position here.
Well, at least they're keeping status quo. They've got a very good setup, so they have a little left over even with the price increase. But there's always the possibility they could go down if Swiss Chip, their insurer, that's the statewide health plan that the district participates in, if that holds the line, they're ahead of the game down the road each step along. But if it doesn't hold the line, it goes up more, at least they're keeping pace.
Yeah.
Excellent. I think it's an excellent contract for them, and they will vote on it to approve it on Tuesday of next week. That is the 20th. So generally, there is labor peace in the valley until the beginning of 2018, I think. That's when the city has to go back and renegotiate everything, right? As you recall? I think we have all the city unions under contract.
I'm not sure.
I think so, but we are the last ones to settle were the firefighters, and so now everybody's in the fold until, I believe, 2018. But that's a city problem. Meanwhile, the school district can hang loose for another 2 years and start negotiations 6 months before July 1st, 2019. So this is something that we never expected, Jim. After all, there was no indication, not even a indication from the Board of Education that, hey, we'd like to report that we're having good discussions with teachers right now, and we may be able to. I mean, it would be nice. People would feel very good to hear that announced.
Well, I think that in terms of negotiations, it's not necessarily good in labor negotiations to say how things are going.
Well, or they could say something really oblique, like saying, we're working with the teachers on this, not giving positive or negative or whatever. But I mean, as I have said, for 16 years we've been doing the show now, talk to us. Tell us what's happening as much as you can, and then we believe you more.
Right.
Right. It would be nice, but I mean, to Dr. Smith's credit, he was able to get this done. And as I say, record time, the fastest I've seen in 16 years of covering the school district. I mean, comes in, comes out, fixes everything, then moves on to the next big assignment. So we will miss this kind of efficiency in management, won't you? Right. He is, of course, leaving on July the 1st, and Dr. Joseph Ricca comes on in and takes up the reins of the White Plains School District. But now, moving along to the next slide, please. We got robocalls from Milagros Lacuona, the candidate that is opposing Mayor Roach for mayor, hopefully in the primary in September. And her robocall came out this week. And one thing that both of them did not do was they did not do the robocalls in Spanish. It would be nice had both of them done that, but they did not. And Ms. Lacuona repeated some of her promises, her support for more firefighter positions, and this is now becoming an intriguing issue, is how much more can the city spend on personnel? This is the situation whereby the three other council mates that are running with Lacuona, Mr. Craver, Mr. Goldman, and Mr. Siddiqui, are also saying that we need to support the safety of the city, among other things. But this is a budget issue, folks. I mean, how can you keep increasing things?
Don't know. It's always been done, but
it has always been done, but it is an issue that they have to really start talking about, because the money has to come from someplace. I mean, everybody's looking for money coming up. Next slide. And this slide consists of a shot of the County Executive Robert Astorino's Shared Services Conference with the mayors and leaders of the towns, cities, and villages in Westchester. It happened Thursday morning, just before we're taping this show. And at the conference, it was to comply with Governor Cuomo's directive that all counties have to submit a plan to share services. And what the city's leaders were asked to do was to submit suggestions, a sort of answers to a request for a proposal about where they felt cities and towns could save money. So there were a few suggestions made that I stayed for. I left after about an hour and a half. And what was fascinating to me, Jim, was everybody was concentrating, we need to consolidate sewer districts. We need more help on evaluating the sales taxes. Property taxes, making them more equitable and making them more clear from the county. And also, they needed help on the opioid problem, because the smaller cities and towns just cannot handle the situation. Now, you've been down this road of consolidated services before, as we all have. We first heard it many years ago, and I recall that when White Plains worked with the school district to consolidate services, they were only able to find some $75,000 in savings, mainly on car repair. And Tom Roach, if we can have this slide of Mr. Roach, shown in the bottom picture, Tom Roach, when he took the microphone, said that one of the major things to look at is if other towns want to share and say, like sewer facilities and all, that a city, so like White Plains, has already built, they should perhaps consider that they have to pay for that, because White Plains put in the improvements and the other town did not. But the other town, if they bought in, would be paying for that, and they would be getting it free. Now, this is an intriguing problem, and Kevin Plunkett said that Mr. Roach was absolutely right. This had to be really looked at as to how you would share who pays. It always comes down to who pays. Everybody likes it when somebody else pays and they don't.
Well, what would happen? These smaller towns would connect into the county sewer system?
Well, that is what we really don't know. I always thought it was one huge sewer district, but individual towns had to take care of their own sewers, and they hook up and they. But now, if you do one district, that could do a great deal towards lowering the sewer taxes, supposedly. But we don't really know. Then there was the school districts also were asked there whether or not they could consolidate, and many of them said, we already do that, particularly the small cities and towns. Now, what is the timetable on this? They have to have a draft on the plan as of August the 1st, a draft. That's about a month and a half away. We'll see. Then they have to, between August the 1st and September 15, have public hearings on it. And then they have to, up to till September 15th, then they have to submit the plan to the state by September the 16th for approval. Now that's a very short timetable to get all the mayors and cities and towns to agree to a plan that they can submit. As one mayor said, he felt this sounds like a great idea, but he can't see it happening. And this is always what happens. So do you think this is actually going to work? Because it could be a very, it has to be looked at.
I don't know exactly how this works, but I believe it's in Nassau County. Mm-hmm. They have like one police department.
Uh-huh.
That is stuff we could probably work on. We may not get down to one, but the larger communities that have fairly sophisticated police departments could really start to take over the operations of course there's always turf wars, but take over the operations of the smaller communities.
Well, this is particularly true considering this opioid problem. Does
the opioid problem come totally under the police department, or is that the health department, or?
It's totally under the police department when it comes to breaking the law with selling illegal opioids.
I thought you were talking about treating.
The police have to have the treatment device to take them out of their drug-induced condition that they sometimes find them in. But now, turning once again to another educational matter. This is Mary Ellen Elia, shown when she visited White Plains 2 years ago. And the State Education Department announced this week that they were going to shorten the assessment tests. Now remember, this year they gave the students longer periods of time to take the test. They were on deadlines.
And now, what does this do for the particular student when they take these tests? How does that affect the students?
Well, it depends on what questions they eliminate, doesn't it? Do they eliminate the harder questions? Do they make them more simple? I mean, it is not exactly clear exactly how they're going to shorten the tests. My feeling is you take out the more difficult questions, which perhaps may measure more of a skill. What is the ultimate effect, which I hope does not happen? I hope the tests are not simplified and shortened to the standpoint where it's much easier to get higher passing grades on them, because that's what we had before these assessments were put together. For example, as I did on this very stage, as Ed Sullivan used to say, I went through the whole process of where the passing curve was on the math tests. It was like you had to only get 27 out of 80 points to pass, and that was before they even did the new assessments. So,
Well, if a student does not pass the assessment test, what happens? Is that student left back, or?
No, he's not left back, that we know of. If you left them back, perhaps they would learn the material better instead of being handicapped by their inability to read. It's mainly a reading problem that we have the next year. But I think it's something that has to be carefully looked at. You know, how much shorter are they going to be? Does the top student hit the test and finish it in like 2 hours and get a great grade? But everything rises. Is that the strategy? I hope not. Now, we have come to the point in the show. It's become a tradition in the last 6 months, Jim, and that is Trump the President. And today, Peter Katz has prepared this edition of Trump the President, and as we'd like to point out, on the Trump clock, there are 1,303 days left in Mr. Trump's first term. The Washington Post reports that President Trump is under criminal investigation by Special Counsel Robert Mueller for obstruction of justice. The Post says that 5 sources supplied that information to its reporters. A spokesman for Mark Kasowitz, President Trump's personal attorney, says that the leak by the FBI is reprehensible. However, the Washington Post did not say that the source of its information was the FBI, so it's not known why Kasowitz made the charge that the information came from the FBI. This morning, Thursday, June the 15th, when we're taping, President Trump took to Twitter again after a couple of days of silence on the investigation looking at Russian involvement in the election and to what extent his campaign may have been involved with Russians. He repeated his previous allegation that Robert Mueller's investigation is a witch hunt. That's a quote. There have been reports for several days that President Trump wanted to fire Mueller and put an end to the investigation. The latest twist is that, according to reports, White House staffers managed to talk Trump out of firing Mueller, at least for now. It appears that the investigation has widened to include not only possible obstruction of justice by the president, but Trump companies doing business with the federal government and Trump's business involvement with the Russians, especially the flow of money from Russian banks into the Trump real estate business and the real estate business of Jared Kushner, Trump's son-in-law and White House advisor. Attorney General Jeff Sessions testified this week before the State Senate Intelligence Committee. The subjects included involvement of Trump campaign personnel with the Russians and meetings Sessions had with Russian officials, but failed to disclose those meetings during earlier congressional testimony. And he also failed to disclose on his application for government security clearance. Sessions did not answer many of the questions posed by the senators, frequently saying he could not remember, or that Justice Department policy says he should not answer. When pressed, he could not explain on which Justice Department policy which he was relying. In the days following his testimony, he could not produce evidence that such a policy exists. Go figure. Committee member Senator Ron Wyden, Democrat of Oregon, said, "We're talking about an attack on our democratic institutions, and stonewalling of any kind is unacceptable," unquote. Sessions still did not give answers the senators wanted. And in a very sad, horrible sequence this week, Congressman Steve Scalise remained in critical condition Thursday morning after being shot while practicing for a charity baseball game between members of Congress. Scalise and 3 others, including a lobbyist who also is in critical condition, were hit at a baseball field in Alexandria, Virginia on Wednesday morning. Scalise is the Republican whip in Congress. The whip is the person responsible for keeping other congressmen from the same party in line and voting the way the leadership wants them to vote. Because of this leadership position, the congressional police were with Scalise, and that likely saved many lives because the police were able to shoot the gunman. It is estimated that at least 100 shots were fired during the 10-minute incident. That's a lot. Yeah. The shooter later died at a hospital. He was identified as James Hodgkinson, age 66, who had a history of speaking out against Republican policies as far back as the Reagan administration. And finally today, Gary Brown and Jamie Fair gave a talk on scams affecting older people in the economy, and they distributed pamphlets and made a point of pointing out some of the scams that they are facing. Mr. Brown, who is Senior Abuse Coordinator of the New York State Attorney General's Office, informed seniors at the Lois Bronze Center of the IRS scam, whereby the IRS calls you and says you owe money and you got to pay up right away using a credit card. And then there is the grandma scam, where a relative says, "Send money to help me. I'm stranded without my passport." And then the latest is the foreign lottery prize winner, beginning, "Congratulations, a winner. Send us the taxes on your prize in advance, and we will send you your prize." And the major thing that was pointed out was that senior abuse is on the rise by members of their own family. So that's it for this week on White Plains Week. John Bailey saying good night, Jim.
Good night.
And good night, Peter Katz, and good night for White Plains Week.
This has been White Plains Week, news and commentary about White Plains, Westchester, and the world. The views and opinions expressed on this program were solely those of the participants. White Plains Week, produced by White Plains Citizen Net Reporter, and presented on Optimum Cable Channel 76 and Verizon Fios Channel 45. You may view White Plains Week anytime on the internet at whiteplainsweek.com, youtube.com, and wpcommunitymedia.org. For White Plains Week, this is Peter Katz speaking.